What is up, guys? In this video today, it's going to be on how to cut properly and get to 12% body fat or leaner. So I want to cover how to actually do a proper cut, even past doing just a normal calorie deficit. There's some things that you can do inside of that deficit that most people probably don't do, like even myself in the past. Like when I first started lifting, I had no idea about these certain like things that you can do with your fitness to maximize your fat burn into the same calorie deficit, but we're just prioritizing nutrient partitioning to burn more body fat and have a better experience overall, have higher energy, even be able to build some muscle in the process. So let's get into this. So first off, what not to do. So big mistakes I used to make when I first started, when I was like doing my first cut ever, when I was like 18 years old. It was probably like the worst cut I ever did. Like I got pretty lean, but I lost a ton of strength, ton of muscle, and I don't want you guys to do the same thing. So do not crash your calories, do not guess on your nutrition, do not just focus on calories and protein, and then do not be sedentary on your cut. So all these four things, like you want to really make sure you're getting these right, because if you're crashing calories, you're going to be super low energy. Obviously, you're going to lose body or not body fat, lose muscle as well. If you're guessing on your nutrition, like it's pretty much the fundamental of fitness, like nutrition and training and recovery are like the three core pillars. You can go into like hormones, which we'll get into as well. But nutrition is such a key part, especially if you're dieting to go down to lose some body fat. It's going to be pretty essential to get this right. And then focusing only on calories and protein. So like, yeah, these are the two most important things, of course. Like in the hierarchy of things you want to focus on, calories and protein are going to be at the top. But if you're only focusing on those two things, then you're missing so many things that you can really optimize for, which never take more effort. Like I always say, always going to be precise work that doesn't take more effort. It takes the applied knowledge of just putting that into your program. And then sedentary cutting, like if you're not getting any expenditure in the day, then you basically have to crash your calories to be in a deficit, which is not ideal at all, because we want to increase expenditure and then we can match calories based on where you are at that point. So the proper precise cut. So calorie deficit is just weight loss. So the main goal of this is to be burning fat in the first place. So fundamental is get your maintenance calories. So number one, like before we even enter this, is you have to find your maintenance calories, which you can do, which I help my guys with do really precisely. We want to track body weight over time with calories, see how that moves accordingly, just see how your body responds to how many calories you're eating. Then you can choose your deficit size based on where you're starting from to get down to 12% or even leaner. You just have to know like how to program it correctly based on your starting points. And the whole objective of this is to maximize our fat loss from the same calorie deficit. So you can choose, let's say like a pretty common one is 500 calories in a deficit. That's not guaranteed to be the best fat loss like compared to other deficits in the same like number of 500, but you're doing different things, which we're about to get into, to make it the most optimal cut that you can do. So number one is going to be metabolic flexibility. So I talked about this a little bit in my last video on fasting, and this is a really important topic. I haven't talked about it too much, but it's something that I've really applied to myself over the past, I'd say like 2 years for myself. So you really need to be able to burn body fat in the first place. So if you're not metabolically flexible, what that means is that you're only using glucose or carbs to burn for energy, right? So if you run out of carbs and then you like don't have any glucose in your bloodstream, like you don't have any energy, then you're just gonna crash your energy. You're gonna be super hungry and you're gonna be really flat. And then you're gonna tap into like, you're way more likely to tap into muscle through gluconeogenesis, which is basically you breaking down muscle protein to provide for the glucose. But if you are metabolically flexible, if you can tap into, dietary fat and body fat, if you don't have any glucose available, then you're going to be in the best of both worlds, right? Because you can run out of carbs, but you still have fat. Like we have body fat for a reason, like that is stored energy, but you can only access that if you're metabolically flexible. So if you're not at this point, the body fat that you have is not going to be the best source of energy for you, because you're just going to be very glucose dependent. And this is another topic that I see a lot in the fitness industry is people say to just fill in the rest of your calories with carbs, which it just depends on what your specific goal is. But a big problem with that can be, like, not all the time, but it can be that you don't become metabolically flexible because you're always dependent on glucose, dependent on carbs coming in. And then if you run out, like I said, it's just going to crash your energy, crash your performance, and then you're not going to be able to tap into body fat when you need to be able to actually lose the body fat. Like what I said before, like we have body fat to be stored as energy. So it's really important to get this first off, number one. A few things you can do for this is intermittent fasting, like matching carbs with training demand. Like I always teach my clients, like depending on what you're doing with your training, with your cardio, with your gym, what you're doing in the gym, then you want to match that with your carb intake. You don't want to just fill carbs in just because we want to be able to tap into this body fat as well. So next up is insulin sensitivity. This is a big topic that I've talked about a lot. So this is basically prioritizing your muscles to be like the main sponge of nutrients. So, like all the nutrients that you're eating are way more likely to be going towards muscle. And specifically for a cut, this is gonna be really important because if you're in a deficit, you want to maximize the food that you're eating. Like we're already gonna be in a energy deficit, right? So the food that we are eating, it's gonna be limited. So we want to make sure that the most of this is going to the muscle cells instead of the fat cells. So we don't want it to be going to fats. Like you can be, how do I say this? You can still be in a deficit, but you can still be using it towards fat storage, but it's going to go down because you're still in a deficit. But if you can prioritize the majority to muscle cells, this is how you can actually build muscle on a cut. If you get the timing correctly, with the carb timing and with your training as well, like you really want to be really meticulous with this, like to be really insulin sensitive, because if you're more insulin sensitive, if you can absorb more nutrients to the muscle, then like I said, the calories that you're already eating are just going to be going more directly to the muscle, and you can get just more potent effects from your cut that you're already doing. So post-workout sensitivity, this is when you're the most insulin sensitive. So right after you go train, and then when you're doing cardio as well, it's like more systemic, but you're still going to be, in that post-workout window. And then also you're activating GLUT4, which is glucose transporters, which is basically, if you've seen my other video on this, we have glucose transporters in our muscle cells that they go to the cell surface, basically allowing us to absorb glucose to the muscle when there is muscle contraction. Like number one, when there's muscle contraction, so like in this post-workout window, we can absorb more carbs directly to the muscle, and it's going to help with nutrient partitioning, which is kind of the whole point of this video, is to maximize nutrient partitioning to the muscle in the same deficit. Like you still have the same deficit, but the nutrient partitioning is different. You're going to get a whole different effect from that. So next up is hormones. So this is very overlooked. Like a lot of people don't really pay attention to this in their fitness at all. And you can kind of think about this as multipliers to your progress. You can do everything correctly, right? Like you can have the best diet. If you have the best diet, you're going to have good hormones. You can have like the best training, like you're going hard in the gym, you're doing everything on paper right that you think you should do. But if your hormones aren't in check, then you can't get the most potent effects from this. Like this is going to multiply all the things, all the effort that you're already doing is going to be more potent. It's going to get like a more effective effect just from having more optimized hormones, you could say. So proper testosterone, proper IGF-1, proper growth hormone, thyroid, etc. All of the different hormones in the endocrine system, make sure that you understand the system as a whole, because they all work together to create an effect of fat loss and muscle growth. And we can do this at the same time, even in a deficit, if we get this right. Obviously, we're doing this naturally. We don't want to do like steroids. Maybe in the future when I'm like 50, 60 years old and, I have a hard time getting it up or something. But besides the point, that's not what we want to do right now. But yeah, low testosterone and optimal testosterone is going to be such a big difference. Like the key player here is going to be that testosterone, because it has so many just potent effects on muscle growth, fat loss, even outside of physical performance, like how you feel, your mood, your energy, your drive to achieve your goals. Everything's going to be better with higher testosterone. And you can do this through a few different things. So micronutrients in your diet is really key. So if you're having good nutrition in place, if you actually know how to structure the certain foods that you want to eat, not just like macros, but we're having micronutrients in place. Macronutrients are still important, getting those at the right times, but the micronutrients is really fundamental to get that right. And then lifestyle habits. So there's a few different things, like obviously sleep is number one. You're already weight training. Like I don't want to go into the fundamentals, but hitting the sauna is good for growth hormone, getting good recovery, like taking rest days. There's different like yogurts and like probiotic supplements that you can take to optimize your testosterone. There's like a really big rabbit hole when it comes down to this. getting good sunlight, getting good supplements in. Like there's a lot that goes into it, but just know like if you can optimize all this part, like it's going to be such a multiplier to what you're already doing, which is kind of the whole point again of being in the same deficit, but just getting more effects from that same deficit. And then carbohydrate timing. So you really want to think of carbs as a tool for your training and for your recovery. So this sandwich, as you could call it, this is like how I like to think about eating my carbs. So we have the carb sandwich here. This is something that I coined, like a little thing that I did. So pre-workout, you want to have some carbs to match your training demand. Again, all carbs are always matched to training demand. Going back to metabolic flexibility, you just want to make sure that you're using them as a tool for training and recovery, but not too much, not too little. You want to like find that sweet spot with carbs so you can get the most potent results and still be able to tap into body fat. So pre-workout, just have enough carbs for training. It just depends on what you're doing in the gym, and you can obviously like program this correctly, like if you know how to do that. And then post-workout, we're going to have the majority of our carbs to take advantage of, again, the insulin sensitivity, the GLUT4, that post-workout window. It is a real thing. You do want to have the majority of all your nutrients in this post-workout window. And then even outside of this, so after your post-workout meal, get some movement in, because you want to use all the carbs that you eat, like all the carbs that you eat, you want to put them to use. So a quick thing you could do is like after your post-workout meal, do like a 5-10 minute walk, like at the minimum, like just 5 minutes. You want to be able to, going back to GLUT4, like at this part, like if you're walking, to an extent you're activating GLUT4 through muscle contraction. It's going to be a lot better than just being sedentary and not using these carbs at all. It's going to be because you have to rely on insulin to clear your blood glucose, and we want to help out insulin to drive nutrients to the muscle cell instead of the fat storage. So if you can get some post-workout movement in, like after the post-workout meal, it's going to be the best ideally to clear the blood glucose. Even if you could do like like the bare minimum is like the 5 minute walk, 5-10 minute walk. If you could do more, then that'd be obviously better, but it just depends on your schedule, what you're doing throughout the day. And having high versus low insulin periods. So insulin from carbs, it can help you at the right times, and it can also hurt you at the wrong time. So having high insulin periods around your training and then low insulin outside of your training window, because again, going back to metabolic flexibility, that's like the whole point of the macronutrient timing, is optimizing for metabolic flexibility, insulin sensitivity. Hormones are going to help as well. And then those two things are going to be the most potent things to be able to maximize the fat burn that we have in the same deficit as well. So knowing how to do this correctly, and you can still have some carbs outside of the window, but I would definitely do slow digesting so you're not, it's still low insulin. And it just depends on what you're doing with your previous training, like what you did here. It depends on, if you had a heavy leg day, for example, you can do more carbs after this. And then, for example, the next day of training, let's say, even, past this point, it just depends on what you're doing in the gym, what your training is. And you can match that with your carb intake to your training demand. And then the training part, so low volume and high intensity. So when we're in a deficit, we're going to have less recovery ability. So the more calories we have on this end, the more that we can recover from the training that we're doing, right? So if we're on the lower end, if we're in a deficit, we're not going to be able to recover as much. So we want to lower the volume. And honestly, you have to program this right. Even in a surplus, I wouldn't do very high volume. It just depends on certain muscle groups that are lagging, and depending on your mind muscle connection, you can do a little bit more volume because the stimulus just won't be there. But if you can get that proper stimulus with the high intensity, low volume, then that's really all you need. You can do 2 sets on most exercises. The rep range is variable to the mind muscle connection, just depending on how good you can connect and stimulate the muscle. And then always progressive overload as well. So a big mistake I see is people, they go into a deficit and then they just expect to lose muscle and lose strength. But you always want to be making sure that you're at least trying to get stronger, so you can give yourself that opportunity to actually start growing in the gym in your deficits. Make sure you're tracking your lifts, adding a little bit of weight, the normal progressive overload. You're still doing this in a deficit because we can actually get the most potent effects, especially if you're doing, the timing of everything. If you're getting all these parts right, then you should be at least a little bit progressing in the gym as well. So in the same deficit is always same deficits can equal different outcomes. So nutrient partitioning is what we're optimizing for here. Using, what I just covered in the video, we can really maximize muscle growth signals with the correct optimization, with the correct timing of our training, our carbs, and the most nutrients based on when they're the most insulin sensitive, and then structuring your whole day and your nutrition based on what you're doing throughout the day. So it's very individualized. Like, obviously, if you come to me and say, like, help me make a plan, like, I can help you, but I just have to know exactly like what your day looks like, what your training looks like, see what we can tweak based on your training, your nutrition, and then like the timing of your schedule throughout the day to make the best effect for you, because it's very different for everyone. Obviously, we don't have the same schedule, all of us, so it just depends on what you actually want to do specifically for you. So if you guys enjoyed this, you can schedule a call in the description to work one-on-one with me. But yeah, hope you guys enjoyed this. I will see you guys in the next one.